On the 10th anniversary of his relationship with Leonard Brooks, he chose to spend it with his secretary. I cleared out the memories of those years one by one and prepared to exit his life. When he realized that I was really leaving, he finally panicked. He said to me tremblingly, "Isn't it like this for all rich people? One at home and one outside. Everything I have is yours. Isn't that enough?" I looked at him steadily and asked, "Leonard, are we the same as them?" 1. On their 10th anniversary of love, Leonard had his house filled with gifts. Brilliant pigeon eggs, bags that only VIPs can get, and flowers that two people can't hold. There were so many gifts in the room, but his presence was the only one missing. He said as usual that he was busy. I opened and closed the boxes one by one, tears streaming down my face, my heart aching beyond words. 14 minutes ago, a strange account shared the updates of Leonard's secretary Pamela Patterson in my private message. In the photo, Pamela is holding a small bouquet of lilies and smiling like a flower. The accompanying text is, "Someone who will be by my side whenever I need him." The hand with a watch in the photo belongs to my husband, who was sleeping soundly beside my pillow 12 hours ago. The room full of gifts seemed to be mocking me. I wish he had forgotten. But he didn't forget. He just knowingly chose his beloved girl on this important day. Carol led the other nannies to put the things away one by one, and then said to me carefully, "Madam, your husband is still very attentive. Even if you don't eat, you can drink some soup. After all, now you..." I turned off the screen, wiped my eyes, and interrupted her. "Carol, don't tell him." Carol hesitated but nodded. I threw the gifts I had prepared into the trash can. Most beautiful things are not solid. Colorful clouds are easily dispersed and glass is fragile. Youth is not eternal, and neither is youth's love. The boy who loved me to death is really gone. Even his love, which seemed unparalleled in the world, has also disappeared like morning dew in a certain morning. 2. Leonard, 17 years old with bright eyes, sat at the table behind me. Loved to kick my stool, loved to hide my pen, loved to deliberately mess up my hair. But he is also very considerate. He would bring breakfast for me, get warm water for me, and put on a coat for me when I sleep on my stomach. On an afternoon when I had menstrual pain, he reached out to take the test paper and quickly stuffed a candy into my hand. I couldn't stand other boys talking to me, tapping my back with their fingers to ask questions. In the end, he asked with red ears whether I should go to watch his game. I was kicked out of the house because of my unsatisfactory midterm exam results. He arrived after receiving a text message. The boy in the night was incredibly handsome. With a cool breeze on his body, he took me, who was crying, to his grandfather's house. He cooked me a bowl of noodles, touched my head and said, "Eat it, and everything will be over after you eat it." When I heard that, I cried even louder. He was in a panic, and finally he got angry and pulled me into his arms. He said, "Sherry Ross, stop crying. I feel bad. I have accumulated several boxes of small notes from us, but he didn't confess his love to me until I was 19 years old. When I asked him why, he scratched his head and said embarrassedly, 'I can't delay your studies, top student.' Well, I'm afraid of delaying my own studies. Your grades are so good, I have to work very hard to get into the school next door to you. If we were in the same city, we wouldn't have to be in a long-distance relationship." I threw myself into his arms and felt that his arms were the warmest place in the world. 3. Leonard returned home at 1 in the morning. The joy on his face from making his lover laugh had not yet faded, but he pretended to be tired after being busy, like a clown with half-faded paint. He handed the coat to Carol and asked me while pulling his tie, "Are you satisfied with the gift?" I dressed myself up as usual and calmly replied, "I am satisfied. They are all very valuable." He stole a glance at my reaction as if surprised at my calmness, so he came over, put his arm around my shoulders and said carefully, "Sorry, baby, I should have been with you on such an important day, but I really can't leave. You know, many things in the business world can't be shirked." He always smells of cologne now, and when I got closer I could smell the sweet fruity scent. I suddenly felt a little nauseous and said calmly, "In the past, no matter how busy you were, you would never miss my birthday or our anniversary." Zhou Ming was speechless. After a while he spoke, "Yes, it's a day that comes every year. It's okay to miss it once or twice. We are not children anymore. Do we still have to care about this?" Seeing that I didn't say anything, he said, "How about this? I'll let Gary go shopping with you tomorrow. and you can buy whatever you like, even if you buy out the entire mall." I looked at him and nodded silently. This nod absolved him, and he breathed a sigh of relief, let go of me, and turned to walk towards the bathroom. 4. Leonard, 23 years old, is ambitious about the world. In the early days of our business, there were only 2 of us in the company. We invested all our working capital, but have not seen a penny of repayment. We lived in a small rental house. The environment was terrible. Everything was rotten. But we had love and enough to live on. I cook all my own meals, grow flowers in Lauganma bottles, and only buy refills of facial cleanser and shower gel. Leonard wore his work uniform as pajamas, drank water from a thermos, and took public transportation to do his business. At night, I leaned in his arms, and the 2 of us lay on the narrow bed, listening to the quarrel between the couple next door, and discussing in low voices who was right and who was wrong. A thick quilt helps us protect ourselves from the north wind that comes in through the window. On my birthday, Leonard was too poor to even take me out to eat. He added 2 eggs to the noodles he cooked for me and said shyly, "Baby, let's just keep this for this year. Next year, I will definitely give you the most grand party, where you can wear a beautiful dress in a fancy restaurant and receive blessings from everyone." After I finished my noodles, I tapped his forehead and said, "It tastes good. Keep it up." His eyes suddenly turned red, and he hugged me tightly. "Baby, I really love you so much." I hugged him back and whispered, "Leonard, me too. Pretty dresses, fancy restaurants, those are all great, but they can't compare to you." 5. Leonard had fallen into a deep sleep. I looked at his face immersed in his dream and recalled our past. The 17-year-old boy who likes me so much. An ambitious young man of 23. And now the face is so steady that it seems a little unfamiliar. 3 years ago, Leonard proposed to me. The ceremony was extremely thoughtful, with a dress that took so much effort to make, wedding rings made from legendary jewelry, and guests who were all wealthy and noble. Every detail was worth scrutinizing. Our wedding was called the wedding of the century by the media. Our story was hailed as a love legend by the media. Even my parents, who had cut off ties with me because I resolutely stayed in Beijing, couldn't help but send me a message, saying that I had made the right choice after all. One night before the wedding, I found a messy lipstick stain on Leonard's shirt sleeve. I asked Leonard, and he explained with a smile that his business partner was drunk and he helped him up. He said, and I believed it. Now that I think about it, it's not that I really believed in him that much, but I didn't dare to admit that the love that I had persisted in for many years had already deteriorated and rotted long before I even noticed. After the wedding, Leonard said, "We want to have a child before we are 30 years old." For this child, he prepared a light yellow baby room in our villa. Now, I stroked my belly gently, feeling sad. When I woke up the next day, Leonard had already gone to the company. I opened the social platform, and the small account that shared Pamela's updates sent me a private message with an address and time. 6. For Leonard, 29 years old, everything is within his reach. The flowers are so numerous that they are dazzling. The young moans, enthusiastic compliments, and calm affirmation were all telling him to fall. Different scents, later and later return home times, and excuses that are so plausible that no one can expose them. The new story begins the day he meets Pamela. Pamela is a student in the art department. Not long after graduation, she started interning in a gallery. After Leonard became rich, in order to cater to the upper class, he also began to appreciate and collect works of art. At the gallery's reception dinner, Pamela boldly refuted Leonard's comments, and the 2 met. Less than 4 months later, Pamela resigned from the gallery and went to Leonard, becoming his assistant in name only and his bed partner in reality. I was rushed to the hospital because of acute appendicitis. In the dim light, I saw that his tie was not the four-in-hand knot I tied for him, but a simple and casual oriental knot. Just like the girl who tied it for him personally, so lively, so free and easy, and she was only 23 years old when she became his lover. Many senior people in the company have witnessed how Leonard and I have come this far. Judith Hughes, who is closest to me, reminded me indirectly that people's minds are fickle, and that if I want to continue my relationship with Leonard, I need to be more careful. Just a week after she reminded me, I ran into Leonard and Pamela at a restaurant. Leonard had just brought me to the same place. He seemed to be thinking about something, but I thought he was too busy at work and told him to relax completely since it was a rare break. Little did he know that he was thinking of bringing his little girl here to enjoy the surprise, gratitude and love on her young and delicate face. 7. I dressed up a little and went to meet Pamela. She chose a secret club as the venue. When I arrived, she seemed to have been waiting for a while. She looked even better than in the photo, as sweet and fresh and full-bodied as her usual perfume. I took my seat and said calmly, "Sorry, there was a traffic jam on the road, so I was delayed for a while." "Did you wait long?" She smiled and replied, "I just arrived too. It's always like this in Beijing." She looked so proud, as if she was the owner of this city. I took a sip of the tea brought by the waiter and asked, "Why did you call me out today?" She looked me over carefully and said, "I asked you to come out, but you didn't seem to have any emotion at all." I have no comment. She continued as if talking to herself, "I called him out on your 10th anniversary and kept him. I also sent you a private message, but you didn't seem to react." I laughed. "So what reaction do you want to see from me? Have a big fight with him?" She hesitated for a moment and said, "At least not like this now." I sighed. "You don't understand." She quickly replied, "But I understand that his heart is no longer with you." When saying this, Pamela deliberately puffed out her chest, which is the action a little girl uses to encourage herself when she feels insecure. I smiled and asked, "Does it matter who his heart is with now?" She asked, "Isn't it important?" I also began to look at her. Auction ring, limited edition bags, tailor-made clothes, a large flat in the city center, a restaurant where ordinary people don't even know which way the door faces. "So you think he loves you?" She emphasized to me, "But he does love me." My eyes fell on the wedding ring on my left hand. Leonard's love is actually not precious. 8. Before she could even open her mouth, I went on. "He loved me a lot, too. He loved me much more than he loved you. We met at the age of 16, became close friends at the age of 17, and started dating at the age of 19. Over the past decade, he has done countless things for me, and anyone who hears about it would feel that his love for me is as deep as the ocean. When you slept in the same bed with him, did you notice that there is a long scar on his arm? His company was just starting out that year, and we did a lot of things ourselves. When I was shipping a product, I lost my balance, and he rushed over to protect me. A nail scratched his arm, leaving that long, deep scar." Her eyes unconsciously looked to the upper left, and she made a thoughtful expression. After confirming that everything was correct, she held the cup tightly with both hands, and jealousy appeared in her eyes. "You are telling me this to show off your past and tell me that I can never challenge your position?" I gave him a mocking smile. "Why would you think so?" I drank the last sip of tea in the cup. "I just want to tell you that the person who once loved me like that now has you. Not only you, but perhaps many other people. Of course, I won't blame you. Love is a matter between two people, and the one who made a promise with me was always that one person." Seeing her stunned, I stood up and said the last words. "I know that you took the initiative to provoke me, hoping that I would scold you and slap you. Then you can come to him pitifully and ask for more love and care. Maybe you are secretly hoping that after tearing this layer of window paper, you will be able to walk into the Zhou family's door with a legitimate reason one day. If you want this position, you should talk to him. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem to have any plans to make you a regular employee. He even begged me, hoping that we can have a child before we are 30 years old." 9. After leaving the club and returning home, I sent the recording of the entire conversation to Leonard. Leonard called back a few times quickly, but I didn't answer. He sent another message. "Where are you? Are you home? Wait for me, I will be back soon." I glanced at my phone, put it down, and quietly looked at the scenery outside the window. He came back very quickly, and based on my understanding of his journey, I knew that this was the fastest speed. He saw me sitting by the window, breathed a sigh of relief, winked at Carol, and came over. He walked up to me, and the first thing he said was, "I'm sorry." I asked him, "What are you saying sorry for? Is it because you had her, or because she made a scene in front of me?" He was silent for a while before speaking. "I will teach her a lesson. From now on, she will never appear in front of you again." I asked coldly, "If she doesn't appear in front of me, does that mean she doesn't exist?" Leonard put his arm around me and said in a gentle voice, "Sherry, in the business world, there are many things you cannot control. Everyone brings their own clothes, but I don't. Do I want to show off how untainted I am in front of those old men? So many things need to be discussed at the wine table or at the horse farm. But no one will bring their first wife to those smoky and chaotic occasions. Even if I bring you, you won't be willing to communicate with those women. So I need someone to deal with those situations. I turned my head and looked at the eyes of the man I loved deeply. Leonard, don't make your cheating sound so righteous. You took her to the restaurant we went to, bought her all the magazines in the city to celebrate her birthday, and you still want to say that it was for business considerations because she missed our 10th anniversary? 10. Leonard looked embarrassed when I exposed the matter. He obviously didn't expect that I knew so much about their relationship. He forgot that I have been with him all the way, and I have contributed half to the establishment of the company. Even though I have faded out of the management now, it does not mean that I have become blind. Leonard took a deep breath and slowed down his voice. Sherry, everything I have is yours. I have never schemed against you, never wanted to separate from you, and never thought of replacing you with someone else. We are firmly tied together, and our children will inherit everything I have, which is better than 90% of the couples in this world. If the water is too clear, there will be no fish. Some things should be let go, and there is no need to be so fussy about them. Turns out that 10 years of experience can change a person like this. A young man who only had eyes for me turned into the man in front of me who always said, if the water is too clear, there will be no fish. He rotted quietly at some point in time where I couldn't see him. I felt nauseous, pushed him away, and ran to the trash can to retch. After vomiting, I wiped the corners of my mouth with a tissue and said to Leonard, Leonard, you look so disgusting. After Leonard became successful, everything went smoothly for him. He heard only compliments and saw only smiling faces. It had been a long time since anyone had disobeyed him, let alone criticized him in such a hateful way. Anger welled up on his face, but he suppressed it with great effort. He said in a deep voice, Sherry, you are not rational enough now. When you calm down and think about what I said, you will know that it is all the truth. It is rare to be confused. You must learn to accept change. I grabbed the book next to me and threw it at him. Get lost. He tilted his head slightly, and the book hit his shoulder hard, making him groan. He roared, calm down. I grabbed another glass and threw it at him. 11. A quarrel. It ends with Leonard slamming the door and walking out. Even without looking back, I already knew where he was going. I stayed where I was, controlling my breathing to avoid fainting from alkalosis. Carol came in trembling with fear. I said to her in a trembling voice, I'm sorry to make it more difficult for you to clean up. Carol shook her head and came over to pat my back. No, this is my job. But madam, you are pregnant now, you shouldn't be so angry. I smiled sadly, my breathing still couldn't calm down and tears rolled down. Carol hesitated for a moment but still advised me, Madam, you are a good person, so I have something from my heart to tell you. I have worked in a wealthy family for more than 20 years, and I have seen everything. The rich and powerful families look glorious, but there are so many things behind them that cannot be explained. The Zhou family is already clean. Even if you look for someone else, there will be no one more suitable than you. Of course, you have been together for many years, so it is understandable that you cannot accept it for a while. I actually didn't hear a word she said. I waved my hand, asked her to clean up first, and went into the inner room. When I first found out about Pamela, I thought about divorce. But the feelings I've had for so many years have already become a part of my life. My love, affection, and affection for Leonard seem to have merged with my bones and blood. Every inch of it being peeled off will bring excruciating pain. In addition, the birth of the baby in my belly came suddenly, so I thought about whether I should give my baby a complete family. But the arduous wait on the night of the 10th anniversary made me realize one thing. I only have one life, and I should not and cannot spend the rest of my life with such a person, even though he was once my only answer. So I threw the pregnancy test stick that was given to me as a gift into the trash can, and I didn't want this man anymore. 12. I opened the safe, sorted my documents and put them in my bag. I received dividends from Leonard's company, and I hold a lot of stocks with a huge amount of money in my account. These are the fruits of my labor, and I will take them with me even if I withdraw from this marriage. As for bags, clothes, jewelry, and artworks, They were either given to me by Leonard or purchased for attending events with him. I don't want them anymore. With the mood of letting go, I packed for several hours and packed 2 suitcases. After years of dating and marriage, when it really came time to leave, it turned out that all they had were 2 suitcases. I left the Brooks house and drove to the large flat that I had purchased before my marriage. It was well secured and had cleaners come to clean it regularly, so it could serve as my temporary shelter. I put the important things in the safe and asked someone to contact the best divorce lawyer in Beijing overnight. There was no message from Leonard on the phone. He was probably still immersed in Pamela's tenderness, trying to calm down his anger. I ordered a takeaway to make sure I had a balanced diet and enough energy to deal with the pain tomorrow. After eating, I did nothing but stroke my belly with my hand and spend our last night together in this world with my child. When I woke up the next day, I went to a private hospital where I had an appointment. Before entering the operating room, I opened Pamela's platform and looked at the photos she posted of last night's candlelight dinner. Seeing Leonard's face not shown in the photos, my heart hardened again. In just one morning, Leonard and I's child disappeared from this world forever. I lay on the bed in the operating room, tears streaming down my face, unable to tell which hurt more physically or mentally. I haven't cried so many tears in a long time, and when the doctor told me the surgery was over, I felt like a part of me had gone with the baby. But there is no way. As long as this child is still here, Leonard and I will never be able to cut ties completely. Because of this child, I will feel more soft-hearted towards him and more attached to my family. And Leonard is looking forward to this child. I remember Leonard said that the reason he first fell in love with me was that he unconsciously stared at my focused and decisive profile when I was solving a problem. Today, I use the same decisiveness and even more resolution to decide where our first and only child will go. This was a decision I made the day I met Pamela. When I walked out of the hospital, the nanny I hired at a high price also arrived. She supported me and led me back to the large flat. 14. Leonard must have known that I had left the Brooks house, but he probably thought that I was just running away in anger after a quarrel between husband and wife, so I was angry. He didn't contact me and I was too lazy to contact him. I was taking care of my health while communicating with my lawyer. The updates shared on Pamela's social media platforms are getting happier every day. The news of my departure from the Brooks house spread quickly, and many of the ladies I knew sent me messages. Mrs. Edwards, who was close to me, advised me, "Every family has its own problems. You can be angry, but are you going to get a divorce just because of this? Those vixens out there would laugh their teeth off. Rather than letting them get away with it, you might as well keep your position. For us women, what's important is what we have in our hands. Love and affection you'll understand after you get married, it's just that. When you've rested up, tell me. There's a new sanatorium in the east of the city. I'll invite you to go. Take care of yourself and don't worry about what they do. The money is yours, and the future children are yours, that's enough." Mrs. Edwards is a person who practices what she preaches. No matter how many mistresses her husband, Mr. Edwards, had, she turned a blind eye. Mr. Edwards also treated her with respect, and would not let those women get ahead of her no matter how much trouble there was. Mrs. James, who is both her friend and her enemy, also sighed sincerely. "I thought you and Leonard would be different, but I didn't expect it to be the same. Mr. James mentioned it vaguely before, but I didn't understand it. Now I understand that men are all the same. There is no exception." Mrs. James married a lower-class woman and made a vow of loyalty when she got married. Mr. James lived in the shadow of his father-in-law and behaved himself for nearly 10 years. Now that Mrs. James's father has passed away and Mr. James has grown stronger, Mrs. James has become more humble and turns a blind eye to what Mr. James does outside. As for those who make sarcastic remarks, there are some, and there are also those who take advantage of others' misfortunes. There are no secrets in the world of fame and fortune. Some of it is nothing more than countless people in the game deceiving themselves. 15. Before I asked a lawyer to send the drafted divorce agreement to Leonard's office, Leonard came to me first. My aunt went out to buy some things. I saw through the peephole that Leonard looked very excited, with joy in his eyes and eyebrows. I knew at a glance that Carol was not keeping her mouth shut and had told him about my pregnancy. The password here, as I told Leonard when we bought the house, is the day we started dating. Although I changed it the night I moved in, I think he has forgotten it. I thought about it and went to open the door. As soon as the door opened, Leonard rushed over and hugged me. He was so surprised that his words were a little confusing. "Sherry, when did you find out you were pregnant? Why didn't you tell me?" "I don't know since when." His embrace only brought me feelings of nausea and trembling. I reached out and pushed him away and just looked at him. He didn't notice my abnormality and continued to talk to himself. "I'm sorry. Did I hug you too hard? You're pregnant now, you can't do this. I'm just too happy. Don't live here anymore, I'll have someone pack up, and you come home with me. You can get the best care at home." I shook my head and said calmly, "Leonard, I'm not going back with you." Leonard was stunned for a long while before he spoke. "Are you still angry with me? If you are unhappy, I will send her abroad, and you will never see her again, and you will never hear from her again. This person will disappear from your life, don't worry." I smiled bitterly in my heart. Even at this point, Leonard's option is still to send the person abroad instead of breaking up completely. Fortunately, I have completely given up on him. I even felt a sense of resentment for having to say goodbye to my child. I turned around, handed him the divorce agreement, and said to him, "Let's get a divorce." Leonard glanced at it and asked in astonishment, "Are you kidding me?" 16. I said to him, "Leonard, I'm serious." Leonard grabbed my arms excitedly. "Is it because of Pamela? Sherry, is this necessary? Do you want your child to be without a father?" Even though we had already decided to divorce, when he mentioned the child, I couldn't help but tears flowed from my eyes again. I told him word by word. "The baby has been removed. It was taken away when you and Pamela were in love." When I said this, I felt a dull pain in my heart, but also a sense of pleasure of revenge. The corners of his mouth twitched as if he was trying to force a smile, and he asked me if I wanted to punish him, so I lied on purpose to make him feel uncomfortable. But just as I know him, he knows me very well. He knew that Sherry would not lie to her own child at this time. I continued to hurt him with my words. "Do you know what I put in the gift box for our 10th anniversary? A pregnancy test stick. You could have received one of the best news of your life on that day. Unfortunately, you chose to spend it with Pamela." Leonard's grip on my arm tightened until it was almost painful, and he asked in a trembling voice, "Why are you doing this, Sherry?" The feeling of relief became stronger and stronger, and I didn't even feel a trace of sadness. I said without emotion, "Because I have decided to divorce you, this child will become an obstacle to this." Leonard was so angry that he waved his hand and smashed the vase and tableware on the table to pieces. At this moment, the nanny I hired came in carrying a lot of bags. When she saw this scene, she was shocked. I whispered to her, "It's okay, Auntie, you go in first." After the others went in, Leonard breathed heavily and said after a long while, "Isn't it like this for rich people? One at home and one outside. Everything I have is yours. Isn't that enough?" My eyes instantly turned red and I asked him, "Leonard, are we the same as them?" Leonard was stunned. 17. If I can successfully divorce Leonard, I want to go abroad and start studying again. After being with Leonard for so long, I started to regard his dream as my own dream, and I forgot that I am not suitable for haggling in the business world, nor do I like to fight overtly and covertly with rich ladies. It's a pity that after leaving my place that day, Leonard didn't contact me for 3 or 4 days. My lawyer went to him to negotiate the details of the divorce agreement for me, but couldn't find him. Instead, Pamela sent me a text message with only 3 words. "You win." I shook my head and burst out laughing. She used to think that love was a battle, and as long as she defeated me, she would get Leonard the glittering trophy. Maybe it was because I didn't reply to her, and after a while she actually called me. When I answered the call, I heard her sobbing voice. "Sherry, you win." I asked her, "How did I win?" She said viciously, "Because of my provocation to you, Leonard told me to get out of this city and never show up in front of him again. He also asked me to explain to you, otherwise, he will not let me off easily. Now, his people are guarding me." I sighed and told her, "Pamela, you think you are the protagonist of the palace drama. You can step on other women's heads and win the final victory. But when women take on this role, the only ones who are happy are the men sitting in the audience watching us fight. So, I will not succumb to his settings and let him get what he wants. But you didn't expect that Leonard can betray me easily, so why can't he abandon you at any time? In his heart, feelings are just this little bit. Don't contact me anymore. Although the only person I have an agreement with is Leonard, I also feel disgusted with you from the bottom of my heart. After saying that, I hung up the phone. 18. In fact, Judith sent me a message this morning saying that Pamela was fired and was taken to the company to pack her things. Someone revealed that Leonard gave her a deadline of 24 hours to leave the city. She was very unwilling, so she ran to the top floor with her things and knocked on Leonard's office door, wanting to get clarification. But Leonard was not in the company, so she was dragged out by the security guards who rushed over and left on the street in full view of everyone. It is said that she looked extremely miserable and one of her high heels fell off. After describing the whole process to me in vivid detail, Judith asked again, "Sherry, will you come back? In fact, I think you are still the most important thing in his heart." I whispered, "I'm not going back." Judith was silent for a long time before she said, "I know your personality. If you say you want to break up, you really will. I just think it's a pity to give up like this after you've been through so much together and spent so many years together." I exhaled and said to her, "It's not a pity. It would be a real pity to just keep going." After hanging up the phone, I started to worry. Leonard has not been in the company for several days. Where can I find him to discuss divorce? I have good friends among the company's employees, and Leonard has always known about it. In this play, am I the audience he is calculating? A bad premonition arose in my heart. 18. In the morning, I woke up from the dream of losing my child again, and realized that I had cried so much that my pillow was wet. When I calmed down, I noticed the smell of soup in the air. I thought it was the hired nanny making soup. Because I had just lost a child and was weak, she would make some nourishing meals for me these days. After washing up, I walked out of the room and wanted to take a look. Who knew that the person busying around in the kitchen wearing an apron was someone I didn't expect? Leonard. He heard my footsteps, turned around to look at me, and said with a gentle smile, "Sherry, the chicken soup is ready. Go sit in the living room and I'll bring it to you." My eyes instantly turned cold and I asked, "Why are you here?" Leonard pretended not to hear me. He took out a bowl from the cupboard, scooped half a bowl of soup and handed it to me. I pushed his hand away and asked, "Leonard, why are you here?" He didn't answer but still handed it to me and said, "There are a lot of medicinal herbs in it, but it doesn't smell like medicine. I let it dry for a while and now the temperature is just right. You can have a sip." I couldn't stand it anymore, so I smashed the bowl, splashing the soup everywhere, and asked, "Answer me, why are you here?" The gentleness on Leonard's face cracked, and a somewhat awkward smile emerged. He said, "I miss you. You are weak now and need someone to take care of you." So, I showed our wedding photos to the nanny and said that we just had a quarrel. She let me in and went out to buy things. 19. I turned around, took out my cell phone and called the housekeeping company to fire the nanny. Leonard cleaned up the kitchen, came out, and stayed quietly beside me. After I hung up the phone, I said to Leonard, "Have you read the divorce agreement? My lawyer tried to contact you but couldn't." Leonard murmured, "Sherry, you are just too angry with me now, and you are saying those words in anger to teach me a lesson. You don't really want a divorce, right?" I shook my head. "No, I really want a divorce. You'd better take a closer look at the agreement. If I don't get a response from you within a certain period of time, I will file for divorce. You are the party at fault, and it will be very ugly, which will not do any good to your company." Leonard said to himself, "Sherry, we fell in love at the age of 17, started dating at the age of 19, and got married at the age of 27. We have come so far and have given so much to each other. I don't believe you will give up this marriage so easily. I admit that I did some wrong things, but now I sincerely regret it. To me, nothing is more important than you. I couldn't figure it out before because things were moving so fast and I was confused. Now I'm awake. Did you get a call from Pamela? She will never have anything to do with me again. As long as it's something you don't like, I can give it up." I said coldly, "Leonard, what you think now has nothing to do with me. The only thing I regret is that I didn't break up decisively when I found lipstick marks on your clothes before we got married. In fact, you cheated at that time, didn't you? Pamela is Pamela, and she had other fleeting affairs, so what? Admit it, you are not confused, you are just rotten from the bottom of your heart. What you want is for me to be your legal wife who pretends to be deaf and dumb, and let you have affairs outside. Now you are not awake, You just realize that you are going to lose me, and you are reluctant to give up the sunk cost of those years. 20. Leonard hugged me tightly and said loudly, "No, it's really not. I have really come to my senses and I will change from the bottom of my heart. Your lawyer went to the company to look for me these few days, right? They all reported to me but couldn't find me. Do you know where I went? I went to the small house we first shared after graduating from college. When I had money, I bought it as a souvenir of ours. I sat in that house, thinking about every little thing we did in it. I pushed him but he didn't move me." I interrupted him and said, "Leonard, what's the point of saying all this now? You told me that we are not children anymore. So let's break up cleanly. This way, the memories we once had won't be completely distorted and can remain in each other's hearts in a better state." His eyes were red. "I know you still remember the excessive words I said to you. When I think about it now, I still find it incredible. I fell in love with you when I was 17 and vowed in my heart to be worthy of you. For you, I studied hard just to be closer to you. After graduating from college, you did not accept your parents' arrangement and chose to work hard with me in Beijing and live a hard life. At that time, I told myself that Sherry followed me, and I would make her happy for the rest of her life. Later, the company finally became successful and won the first big order. I hugged you and spun around, feeling that I owned the whole world. How could I forget all this?" He exhaled and said viciously, "In short, I will not agree to a divorce. I can change and use my whole life to prove to you that I will do whatever you want, except divorce." 21. Just like Leonard said, he wanted to show me his sincerity. He began to visit every day, although after a new nanny was replaced, he was no longer allowed into the building. But he would always wait downstairs in my building. Sometimes when I opened the curtains, I could always see him squatting there. The billionaire stared at my house like an abandoned dog, which made the children in the neighborhood look up like him. If I go out, he will try every means to come up to me and say a word or two to me. Perhaps remembering what I said, he booked all the magazines and electronic screens in the city to apologize. It was more grand than the birthday celebration for Pamela. This caused a lot of discussion among the public, and no one knew which financial tycoon had done something wrong that made him apologize to a beautiful woman in this way. His move caused heated discussion in high society. Our relatives and friends took turns to become his lobbyists. Everyone who knew the inside story advised me to reconcile with him. Perhaps from the beginning, they didn't understand why I had gone to such lengths with Leonard over a mistress, nor did they really think that I would divorce Leonard. How could one bear to give up years of relationship, a respectable marriage, a newly wealthy lover, and an upper-class social circle? The divorce was not making any progress, and when things were getting out of hand, I called Leonard and told him that I wanted to invite him to a place. 22. He and I went back to our hometown. When such a person emerged from my hometown, my relatives and friends were all proud of him. Even if they had a fight in primary school, they would still talk about their friendship for 8 generations. So I wore a mask and he wore sunglasses. It didn't look like we were returning home in glory, but rather like we were fleeing in a panic. After getting off the bus, we walked along a road lined with old buildings, without saying a word. Behind me was a student couple, who were discussing how to meet during the holidays without being seen. I can't help but think of the time when Leonard went to college and his school had holidays later than mine, so during the winter and summer vacations, I would stay in Beijing first, waiting for him to have holidays and then go back home together. 2 intimate figures, reluctant to separate when the train arrived. Because I kissed him, Leonard's ears were red when he walked towards his family to greet him. Passing by a shopping mall, there used to be a hot pot restaurant on the 3rd floor. Leonard once worked there for 2 months in order to give me a birthday present, and he even lied to me that he was going to buy himself a new tablet. During that summer vacation, every time I finished tutoring my relatives' children, I would go to see him with some sugar water, and then shamelessly sit there for the entire afternoon, waiting for him to get off work. Passing by our former school, we saw a pair of students walking side by side on the playground track separated by a wall. In a trance, the 18-year-old Leonard said something and ran away laughing. The 18-year-old me chased him and started fighting. As we chased, I suddenly burst out laughing. The laughter of the two of us just spread all the way. When I walked to the breakfast shop downstairs from my house, the lady boss was about to close the stall, and the boss was patting her waist. During the winter and summer vacations, Leonard would get up early and take the bus 4 stops to buy breakfast for his family. Just because of a casual remark I made, I would always go downstairs at 8 o'clock, memorizing words. Then I can receive his big smile every morning when my heart is beating. 23. Finally, I arrived downstairs of my former home. I said to him, "Leonard, now you are 17 years old, wearing the night wind, and come to find the 17-year-old me. What should you do?" He was stunned for a long time. Then he bent down slightly, put his hands on his knees, took a breath, then stood up and said, "Sherry, what's wrong with you? You cried so hard on the phone." I took a deep breath and said to him, I didn't do well on the test. My family wouldn't let me go home. They said they wanted to teach me a lesson." He snorted. "From the top 3 in the grade to the top 10, is that bad?" I sniffed and said, "I called Meow Meow. Meow Meow and her parents went back to their hometown. I had nowhere to go and I didn't know who to call." He patted my head and said, "You're right to find me. I'll take you to my grandfather's house. He goes to bed early and doesn't like to take care of things. I'll tell my parents that we'll stay there tonight, and you can sleep in the guest room." We walked downstairs to his grandfather's house. His grandfather had passed away and he came back in a hurry. He didn't bring the key, so we couldn't go up. I stopped walking downstairs. I turned around, looked into his eyes and asked, "Leonard, 17 years old, I met a very bad man. He said he would treat me well for the rest of his life, but he lied to me. What should I do?" Leonard started to tremble when he heard what I said. After a long while, he finally spoke with a trembling voice. "You should tell Leonard about this kind of person and let Leonard beat him up." Tears fell, and the person in the tears seemed to have really turned into the 17-year-old Leonard who ran towards me. I asked again, "But what if that person is Leonard?" He was silent for a long time, so long that my feet began to feel numb. Finally, I heard those words in the wind. "Then you should throw him away as far as you can. Never ever talk to him again." Good. Postscript. Leonard and I divorced smoothly, and I went abroad as I wished and continued my studies at the university of my choice. From time to time, news about Leonard would come to me, including his romantic anecdotes and his ups and downs in the business world. He got married, divorced, had scandals with internet celebrities, and some of his girlfriends were speculated to be stand-ins for his first wife. Every time, the media would ask at the end of the article, "Will she be the end of Leonard's romantic story?" He still looks brilliant, but investigations against him have never stopped. Financial bloggers describe his career as an empire built on a tightrope. But these have nothing to do with me anymore.